One Futures Barizio here. It is just after 12 p.m. lunchtime on Wednesday, April 29th. Hope everybody's having a great day so far. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and any questions, comments, leave them down below. Really helps out the channel, and I truly appreciate it. Like I said, everything I do here is my opinion for educational entertainment purposes only. Make your own trading decisions, manage your own risks, do what you got to do, um, and do your own analysis. That's the most important thing I can tell you. But hopefully, it is helpful, and there's never anything for sale on this channel. So, and that will always be the case. And so I appreciate it. All right, so let's jump right in. I've been talking about, let's just divert for a minute before we actually talk about any setups or charts. I've been talking about going back and forth between taking the CSI signals, which is how I take Forex signals. You know, if you've been watching videos on here for a while now, that this is how I take my Forex signals. In addition to looking obviously at price action, I don't trade these in a vacuum, but I do. This is my primary indicator. And then, of course, I look at the price action and the market structure and decide whether the signal makes sense. Okay. So I've been going back and forth, as I've been talking about, between using this on the 4-hour or the daily chart. And to be honest, I'm still not decided. Now, obviously, when you think about it, as with any type of strategy where you're doing multi-time frame looking, the shorter time frame is going to give you an earlier signal and more signals, but not necessarily better. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. I'm not saying they're not better in some cases, but it can lead to potentially more false signals. And not that you won't get some false signals sometimes on the higher time frame either. By all means, you will. But it quiets down the noise. The higher up you go, you will get less signals, but theoretically, they should be better quality signals. But that doesn't mean that the ones you take, in this case on the 4-hour, are bad either. 4-hour is still a pretty high time frame. I mean, it's 6 candles in a 24-hour period it paints. So it's enough to keep you busy, but not so short that you're just having to be on the charts all day either. So I'm still trying to kind of work that out. And I think one of the most important things you can do, and I don't talk about this on this channel because every trading channel out there talks about having a trading journal. But I have been collecting data on that, and I'll be sharing the results at some point. I don't have nearly enough data to do it because I haven't really been using the 4-hour for that long, and so I'm really undecided right now. But a trading journal is an important thing, and look, what you include on your trading journal is a completely personal thing, and you don't have to, buy one from somebody on YouTube or on the internet, or you don't have to go out and buy a fancy trading journal off Amazon. I've done that before. I mean, if you want to, you can, but you can just use a notebook or a legal pad, or if you're even moderately competent with something like Excel, you can do it on your computer, which is what I do. I do have a notebook, a daily journal notebook where I'm writing down my potential setups that I'm looking at, my watch list. And you've probably seen my eyes look over at it sometimes. That is actually in a paper journal because it has a date on each page. So I don't have to write the date and go back. It literally just has 1 day per week shown with the date, the month and day. And so that's my easiest way of doing that. I'm a very basic person. I don't believe in making it complicated. I don't need, Tradezilla and all these, freaking journaling sites that are just complicated, hard to use, and, give you data that quite frankly looks pretty, but you're probably never going to use. So you just need to know, just the basics. And again, what you include is completely up to you. Some people like to include even stuff about how you were feeling that day. Like if you got up in the morning and you were in a bad mood, or you didn't get a good night's sleep, or you're distracted about something else going on in your life. You can put all that kind of stuff on there in like a notes psychology section. I don't personally do that, but if that's something that helps you, you should absolutely do it. Okay. And I can definitely see value in that. But I think keeping just some kind of basic journal is really important. And so for me, it basically looks like this. And I just move this stuff. I don't know if you can see all this here. Just want to move this out of the way. And this is really as simple as it gets. Now, I had another one going that um, had so many rows taken up. It was like if I closed it, saved it, and then closed it, when I reopened, I had to scroll all the way down. It was just a pain. So I just copied it and started a new one. And I'm actually going to add a couple more columns to this, but this is what it looks like right now. And it's really simple. It has the pair, the date that I took the trade, the time I took it, what time frame I took it off of. And these trades are open right now, so there's no close date and time. So when there is, I'll fill in the date and the time I closed it, and ultimately what the P&L was. Now I'm going to add a couple more columns to this, just so you know. I'm going to add um, a column for. I'm going to add another P&L column basically, and this one's going to be like H4 P&L, and then I'll add another one that'll say like daily P&L. And then I'm going to add, so I'm going to add a total of 4 more columns, but they're very basic. There'll be an H4 P&L, a daily P&L, which will all automatically auto sum as you go. So as I go down and enter them, it will keep a running total, because I want to separate out the 4-hour profit or loss versus the daily. And then I also want to see how many trades I've taken on each one. Now, obviously, it's not a tall reach to say that I'll take more trades on the 4-hour. And over a period of time, of course, I could just sit here and add them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You just add them up. But what I'm going to do is add basically a counter, so a trade counter. So I'll have like an H4 trade counter. So if I take a trade like this Aussie USD, I'll just put like a 1 right here. It'll just 1 will be all it'll ever be. So it'll be H4. And when I take an H4 trade, I'll tick that box. I'll put a 1. If I take a daily trade, if that's over here somewhere, I'll put a 1 in that box. And so that way there, at the end of the analysis period, not only will it show me a running P&L, but it'll also show me how many trades I took. And therefore, I can look back and say, okay, well, I took 30 trades on the 4-hour and I had $1,000 of profit. I took 15 trades on the daily and I had $1,500 of profit. I mean, I'm just throwing out numbers. I have no idea if that's what it's going to come out to. And then, with a given enough period of time, you can say, okay, well, that is pretty much answering the question. If the daily is better, you're going to get less signals, but ultimately you're making more profit. Or it could be the opposite, right? I could find that, I'm making more on the 4-hour, even though I'm taking more trades. I don't know. And that's why you have to collect some data. But again, you don't need to make it complicated. You don't need to go and pay for a website like a TradeZilla account, which is, can cost you a decent amount of money. And if you're just starting out, I just don't see any value in it. You just need to know just the basics. So you've got something to look back on and give you some idea of how your strategy is performing on different time frames. I think it's also important to know the time you took the trade, because this is like New York session, right? Well, what if I take a trade during the Asian session, right? And I look back and I like, well, most of those Asian session trades ended up being losers. By the time I closed it and looked at the P&L, you know, I don't know. Now this is where like a more complicated website like TradeZilla could come in, because those sites will probably break it up and show you not only when you took the trades, but the time. It can kind of sort it, profit and loss by time that you took the trade or time you closed it. It's a little bit more complicated in Excel because you have to just create more columns. But I don't really need that. I can just go and just eyeball it, which is what I'm going to do. I just eyeball it and say, yeah, I took, if I see a lot more red on my Asian session trades versus my New York session trades, which those are the 2 sessions I trade. I don't trade London because I'm not up that early. I suppose if I take a trade before like 8 a.m. New York time, that's technically the London session. And sometimes I do take early morning, like 7:30. But for the most part, most of my trades are taken well after 8 a.m. or in the evening hours during the Tokyo session. And just because of where I live. So, but the point is I'm trying to get at is like, just keep it simple, put as much information as you need to make it valuable over a certain period of time. Now, the other thing I do, I've talked about my Discord channel, which again is free, but on my Discord channel, this is my channel. I have this setups and screenshots. Every setup that I'm looking at, and I started also adding when I actually take the trade and not just the setup. So once I take the trade, I take a screenshot like this, like dollar Swiss. This was a daily signal I took today, and this is the screenshot I take off of TradingView, right? Here's the signal right here, right, with this blue arrow showing the bullish signal potentially. All right. And again, this is the daily chart. It says 1 day right here, but I also put it in the posting too, daily. And, of course, this tells you the day and time too that you put this in. I dropped this in here at 10:50 a.m. today. I took the trade about an hour and a half before that, but by the time I got to putting the picture in, it was a little bit later. And as you go back to previous days, it will add the date. So this says 10:51 a.m. because it's today. But you can see if you hover over it, it tells you when you posted it. All right. And so, it's because some people like to take pictures of the setups, and I do, but I'm not going to take a picture and then print it out. I know some people like to take like a journal and they print it out, put it in a book. I just think that's a huge waste of paper and ink. It's not necessary. If you have something like this, or even if you don't have Discord, you just take a screenshot. And TradingView makes that really easy. Or if you have screen capture software, and you can get plenty of free versions of it. I have one on my computer that I can take screenshots, and it's a free tool I've been using for years and years called Lightshot. Then you can just create a folder on your computer. Just create a folder on your desktop and call it trade setups and drop them in there, and then just name it. When you drop the image in there, then in the description just put Aussie USD H4 April 29th, New York. And it's a long title, which is why I like putting it at Discord, because obviously this sorts it by date anyway. So as I go back, it goes back in date. And so that's why I like Discord for that. And Discord's a completely free service. I mean, anybody can create a Discord channel, whether you make it public or share it with other people or not, doesn't matter. So this is another tool you can do to take a picture of your setup. What did the chart look like at the time? What did the price look like? What did the indicator look like? What was going on at the time and so you can go back later, not only looking at what the P&L ends up ultimately be on the trade, but, go back if it's a winner, go back and see, okay, well, what was going on the chart? Is there any commonality between the winning trades and the losing trades? That I can see. Am I taking too many trades against the larger trend? Am I not being patient, and should I wait for pullbacks, or take it as soon as I get the signal? Stuff like that. Are both lines diverging from each other, or is one going up and one going sideways? Which is not as strong of a signal, as them diverging off of each other, right? So you can start to build a little bit of a case about and it reinforces with your own brain about what are the best trades to take. Because if you're just shooting in the dark and you have no record at all of what you took, then you're just going to keep repeating the same pattern over and over. Now, if that pattern's profitable, then great, but maybe you can be more profitable. But if overall you still end up or just spinning your wheels, breaking even, or losing money, then you got to like quantify that somehow. And a trade journal, taking screenshots, is the way you can do it. And listen, I'm not taking 50 trades a day on a 5-minute time frame. So this is really easy for me. At most, I'm taking a couple of trades a day. And I've had days where I've taken 0. So it doesn't take much, right? I'll enter the trade. And then as soon as I get the trade entered and set the way I want, put my stop loss in, then I go and take a picture and put it in my journal. Because again, I'm trading on a 4-hour and a daily. So in that 1 or 2 minutes that goes by, nothing's going to really change. So, I'll go ahead, take the trade, and then I'll take my screenshot, put it in Discord, and then go to my trading journal and just fill it in. It takes, what is that going to take you? 1 minute? And, over the course of time, you can begin to paint a better picture of what is working and what's not. and you'll actually will have data you can look at rather than just guessing about which time frame is better. And this is ultimately how I'm going to make my decision. And it may turn out that there's no advantage to one or the other. It may turn out I have more trades on one versus another, but my P&L ends up being about the same. And, and maybe it turns out the 4 hour is more profitable, even though I'm taking more trades than the daily. I don't know. I'm going to be open to it, and that's why I'm collecting the data. So I did want to just talk about that for the first going 15 minutes now, talking about trading journals. But I do feel that it's really important to have some kind of record of what you're doing. And again, it doesn't have to be anything complicated. You can create it here on your computer, put it in a journal, put it on a notebook, on a legal pad, you know, download somebody else's trading journal if you find that's better. Uh, or if you really want to get fancy and everything, then you can subscribe to something like TradeZilla or even MyFX Book, and there's probably a bunch of other um, sites that where you can connect your platform to your to their service, and it'll automatically pull in all your trades and start creating nice pie charts and P&Ls and all kinds of stuff like that. Um, but like I said, I don't particularly need any of that. And so this is fine with me. And I get what I need just, looking at this type of data. So I got to move this out of the way. I don't know if you guys can see this. I think you can see this in the video, but it's just the bar for the screen recording software. Um, so yeah, so that's it. I just wanted to point that out in terms of my journal. And like I said, I am going to add a couple more columns. This isn't something I'm probably going to show every day. It's really not necessary because this is going to be a longer term project that's going to go on for a while. And so I may show it once in a while just to give you an update, but it's probably not going to be something I pop up here every day or every time I make a video. Because again, it's just not necessary. All right, so we'll just jump back to the charts for a few moments and just take a look. So one trade I did take today, and this is probably, in all honesty, not a great setup, but we'll see. I'm hoping the US dollar is going to start picking up a little bit here. If we look at the DXY, which is the dollar index, it's trying to, put in some higher lows here and trying to go higher, but it is struggling. And technically, this probably still isn't a down. This is the DXY again on the daily chart, which is just an index of different currencies against the dollar. But it is a good indicator of what the dollar ultimately does. And you can see the dollar has pretty much been flat in a range since last summer. I mean, this is end of June, July last year. And you can see the dollar really has not gone anywhere. It's been inside of this range between like 196, and it really hasn't gone anywhere. And so that's been kind of reflected in a lot of the Forex pairs, where if there is movement, it's really been reflective of the other currency it's paired against and not the dollar. And you can even see it in the CSI index, where the CSI is just kind of like ranging. This orange line is the dollar, and you can see it's pretty much just going sideways here. So anyways, I did take a long based on this. Probably not a really great trade. And I took it mainly because the Swiss franc has been getting hit pretty hard. And I figured if the dollar could get a little bid, then that would be good. And, so I'm going to hold this trade and we'll see if we can at least get back to the top of this range. That would be a nice little trade. On the 4 hour, there actually was a buy signal here on the 4 hour going back to Monday, 2 days ago, right here. We had the two of them kind of come together and then a divergence away on the 4 hour. That actually was a really great entry right here at the bottom of this little corrective move on this uptrend and took us back. The daily, of course, is going to be a slower time frame. And this is one of the, I guess, risks of the daily time frame, is because it's going to be slow. By the time it gives you a signal, you may be at the end of a current move. It doesn't mean the move's over, but you may get into it and start to experience drawdown and a pullback because it hits that level. You get the signal on the daily, and then it starts to pull back, and you have to go into like several days of drawdown. That's not an ideal risk to reward ratio. which is also part of the reason why I was drawn to the 4 hour, because it's still a long enough time frame where the signals are still pretty good, but it's going to give me those signals quite a bit earlier and hopefully not be getting into a move late and have to sit through a bunch of drawdown before it starts to go back in my direction, if it does. Sorry, guys, needed a drink. I just went for my long morning walk and it's a little warm out. So that's the dollar Swiss. The other one I took, so that was off the daily chart. The Aussie US dollar, on the other hand, I took off the 4 hour chart. And again, we show this here, a strengthening US dollar and a relatively weak to neutral Aussie. And you can see on this price chart here that the Aussie was going up, and then we kind of ran into some sideways stuff. We failed to put in a new high. This is where I start looking at price action. Say, we put in a lower high right here. Price has just been chopping around and hasn't been able to bust higher. Put in what, again, potentially a lower high right here. It started going down. I took this signal. Now, if the dollar continues to strengthen, hopefully it does, then both of these trades will work out because they both are dollar trades, just one's up, one's down. And so, that's why I took this trade, because there was a signal and there was, a chart pattern that kind of looked like this thing was struggling to go to new highs here. There was no signal on the daily chart today. The daily signal again was way back here on April 7th. And this would have been the time to enter this on the daily chart. There's no signal here. So this is kind of and that was a long. So now we're at the point where maybe we're looking at a potential short signal. Okay. Now, and I also wanted to point out, so let's mark off this long signal on the daily. If we go back to the 4 hour, here's that signal on the 4 hour chart. Okay, so we got it here on the daily, which was April 7th at, well, this was 5 o'clock. I wouldn't take a trade at 5 p.m. But the 4 hour signal was about 24 hours before that. So it's not a huge difference. It's a slightly better entry, because you can see on the 4 hour, it was on this big giant candle right here. And then he immediately went into a pullback here on the 4 hour. Well, this was the daily signal. You immediately went into a pullback. So you would have gotten in here and then boom, price went down, went up, kind of made a new high and then went down again. You would have been in drawdown basically at this point around this candle, but then it ultimately did go back up. So it just reinforces what I was saying, that because the daily chart is going to be a lot slower, it's potentially, by the time you get a signal, you're going to hit that time in an area where there's going to be a pullback starting right away. And you get into it and you're like, God, why is it going against me almost immediately? Well, that's why. So again, that's what kind of attracted me to the 4 hour time frame. But again, the drawback to that is you're going to get more signals, but because you're going to get more of this like whipsawing stuff like you see right here. Here's a buy signal, here's a sell signal, here's another sell signal, here's a buy signal right in here. And there's really nothing right here. This is just chopping around garbage. But in real time, when you see this, none of this would have happened yet. You see this, you're like, oh, there's a sell signal. Let me take that. And you go short right here and then immediately goes against you. And that would have been a losing trade. And then you have another, you got this sell signal. That's the one I just talked about. Then you get this little buy signal. I mean, technically, if you had been able to have proper risk management, this would have been okay, right? This was a good buy signal. And then there's another one here. That would have been another opportunity to get in. But ultimately, the best, the most obvious signal came right here when these two kind of came together. And then you see this sharp divergence away from each other. And it's a little bit later, but it's still basically inside this range. So, again, it's just more noise. It's more opportunity for false signals, but it doesn't mean they're all bad. You just have to, be willing to accept the fact that some of the signals are going to be losers, and that's just the way it is. So that was the Aussie dollar. And then the other one was euro. This is a new one. I talked about this yesterday. This is the euro against the Swedish krona. And this one was taken, let me see here. So this one was also taken on the daily chart. There was a 4-hour signal, and again on the 4-hour, it goes back to here. Price was moving up, had this little pullback. We did get this little 4-hour signal back on Monday. This was Monday night. This is actually during the Asian session, 2100 hours. That's like 9 p.m. my time. So there was a buy signal right here on the daily chart. Again, they both were going down, so there was no trade. But now it looks like it's trying to round and go higher again. Again, similar to what we saw on the dollar Swiss, with potentially putting in a higher low right here and heading higher. And they were heading down, and so now I took this long based on that. You can see right now they're both kind of flatlined on this daily chart. And so we'll see what happens. It still looks pretty good. And again, even if we just get back to like range highs here, if we get back to this high, this is one of those pairs. This is what they call an exotic pair, not the euro so much, but the Swedish krona paired with it makes this an exotic pair. And so there's not as much volume on these pairs, but they can form some nice patterns, and they do have a lot of pips associated with them. But again, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because if you end up with a losing trade, you're going to take a bigger dollar loss than maybe some other mainstream pair. But they're just I put the euro dollar and the euro Norwegian krona, which are very similar, on here. You can also pair these against the US dollar, and I have this coded. I have the indicator coded to include the NOK and the SEK by the developer. So those are included now. He finished that for me yesterday. But if I'm going to trade them, I actually like them better against the euro because they're both kind of European pairs, currencies anyways. And it just kind of takes the dollar manipulation off the table. But I could trade them, euro, or I could trade USD NOK or USD SEK, and I might look at those, but I'm probably not going to find that they're any better than trading them against the euro. And so it's just two other ones I've added to my list. But as I mentioned yesterday, I deleted an equal number off of here too. So I'm still at around 20, 22 pairs, and that's plenty. So that is that. If I look at the funded account, we are basically around break even. The dollar Swiss is in drawdown, as I mentioned. And I have Euro Aussie, which I'm probably going to end up closing this one. I've squeezed a lot of money out of Euro Aussie in the last month or so. I took this trade 2 days ago. It was in profit for a while, and now it's in drawdown. It got back to near break even this morning. Now it's back in drawdown again. So if we go and look at the Euro AUD, you can see, we're starting to make kind of a pretty bullish daily bar right here, sitting near these lows. I had to take profit on that trade sitting right here at this low of this candle right here. I figured if you get back down here and not necessarily tag this low, but just come back to this little low, prior to this big move up, kind of like a little order block area if you want to use ICT type stuff. But it hasn't gotten there, and I'm not sure it's going to. I have to really decide. You can see on the 4-hour, it's gotten back to this last pullback area where it sold and made a new low, and it's kind of hitting that area and running into trouble. My stop loss is just above the wick of this 4-hour candle. So whether I let it just run to stop loss or not, I don't know. It's not going to be a big loss because I took the trade off the 4-hour. So I may just let it go and see. I hate to just close it if we roll over and can get back down to near this low before it actually turns higher. But if I get stopped out, so be it. So I'm probably just going to hold it. I don't usually let my trades run to stop loss, but I may do it anyways. The Aussie USD is doing pretty good. Euro SEK is, has a small profit, but that's really small for this pair. If this one really gets going, that'll be a nice trade. And so those are the only 4 trades I have on at the moment. I closed everything else out either this morning or last night. And so, so that's where we're at right now. In terms of other things I was looking at earlier, I was looking at euro yen, and that would be on the 4 hour. We did have this little bullish signal right here that came through yesterday. Yeah, on the 28th. This was yesterday morning. I didn't take it only because you can see the euro yen has been really range bound. And even today, even though it did go up after that signal, it was on this candle right here. And it has gone up, but you can see there's a very tight range here. And it's struggling to get past that range. We're back up to the top end of it again. And I guess I could have taken this trade and then just put a take profit at the top of the range, but I don't. I've told you guys I don't like taking range trades, so I didn't take it. But it was theoretically it was a trade, and it would still be viable if he had taken it based on. No, I don't want that. I want a measuring tool. If I took it based on this 4 hour signal, uh, it'd be up about 36 pips right now, so nothing too crazy. Um, and for this range, it just didn't impress me. If this looked like a really nice pullback area and it was coming out of there, I definitely would have taken it. New Zealand US dollar was another one, but I took the Aussie US dollar. They were pretty much the same setup. And New Zealand US dollar was already sitting when the signal came through. I don't know if that was on the daily. No, it was the 4 hour. Okay. So we had this pull away right here, but it was already further down this downtrend, approaching these old lows down here. And now it's now broken below there. So it would have been a good trade, but I felt the Aussie USD had more headroom between where I got in and the similar support area here. So I'm hoping the Aussie USD does the same thing. It's just the Kiwi USD is just a little ahead of the game. Pound Canadian. So pound Canadian, I closed this one in a loss. It wasn't a profit. We had this buy signal right here, but you can see the Canadian dollar really rallied back up today, and the pound flattened out, and we kind of now come together, and you can see that caused this thing to go down. And so I ended up closing that trade. If we look at it on the daily chart, let's see where we're at. On the daily chart, we're kind of not really doing much right here. This is actually a little bit of a bullish signal right here, but clearly there's no bullish price action. That's why I said you can't just take these trades in a vacuum. You can see we've basically been moving sideways for about a week now. It's really done absolutely nothing. If you look to the left here, all these candles, there's a range right here. You can clearly see that this has been in, and the indicator has indicated that it's just being flat. So if we start to get some divergence, some real divergence away, then maybe there would be a long, but there's certainly no long setup here. But it was on my watch list, but clearly I'm not taking that. And like I said, I did close the old trade. I had Euro Canadian on the list too. Um, yeah, this one originally was off of a buy signal. But again, this is very much like the pound Canadian. They're very similar pairs. The same exact thing has happened. It went up a tiny bit, and then the Canadian had some strong price action, and it's now pulled this back down again on the 4 hour. The daily signal is actually still valid in this case. We had a bear set up on last Tuesday on the 21st, and that actually is technically still valid. So again, another argument for the daily chart being better because of the smoothing out the noise of the 4 hour. And there was no buy signal on the daily chart. This only was this last bearish signal here on the daily. So, and if you were in that trade short, let's say you got in at the close of this candle right here, to be realistic, you would be at right now, you'd be up about 70 pips on that trade right now. But it's been a slow grind. I mean, this has been a week on this pair, 70 pips. That's nothing. I mean, this pair can do 70 or 100 pips in one day. So it definitely, got caught up in some chop, but maybe it looks like it's starting to finally make a move down. Let's see if he can take out this low right here. And, if you want to look at that, you could actually say, well, this is a chance to still enter this trade, because even though the signal was a week ago, the price has pulled back, back towards this low, the low of this candle. I mean, it is quite a bit further down. But if this signal is still valid and now we're finally getting the push down, then this will break this blue candle support and head down. But again, that's kind of chasing the market because not necessarily because it's been so many days, but the price is still a decent number of pips away from the original entry. Again, about 70 pips away. So I'm not sure how if that's a good risk to reward ratio. Another one I had was CAD yen on my watch list. Again, just to make the argument for the higher time frame. So we had this kind of sell signal right here, really pretty weak. That was nothing. And then we had this buy signal. This was during the London. Actually, this was during the overnight session, 1 a.m. This was pre-London. This was actually late Asian session overnight. I was not awake at this time. This is like 1, 2 a.m. my time. So unfortunately, I missed that signal. The daily chart had a long signal way back here on April 14th, 2 weeks ago, which would still be valid. And so again, makes another argument um, for the daily chart. But at the same time, we had this little sell signal here on March 30th, and it went down one day after that, went here to here, and then it turned around. So you know, this is the daily chart, gave you a bearish signal, maybe not a good one though. Depending, in hindsight, you can say, oh, I would have exited here, but probably not. You probably would have been looking at targeting these old lows and you would have been wrong. And ultimately either would have stopped out or hit break even on this trade. So you still can get quote unquote false signals on the daily chart. There's no doubt about that. So, and there's an example right there. New Zealand yen, I'm just looking at a couple on my list here. We did have this sell signal right here. Again, the yen has been very range bound. If you look at yen futures, I think I showed that the other day. If we look at yen futures, here's yen futures. Now it looks like it's trying to break lower, but if we zoom out, we are basically back at old lows right here. But the yen looks like it wants to go down more, which the Bank of Japan probably is happy about. They don't like letting the yen go too far up, and it was trying to, but it looks like it has broken some support here. So what was that? That was New Zealand yen. So, but the New Zealand dollar has also weakened. So that's why we're kind of stuck in a range. The yen is, at least in Forex, is showing more neutral, but we've had to push down the yen. But so you can see we're kind of stuck in this range. So you're trading like a weak currency against the neutral. Like I said, that's not always a bad thing, but it sometimes it does make the momentum really slow, like in this case, right? We really haven't gone anywhere since that signal was given. On the daily chart, there was a buy signal back on April 9th, but even that really didn't go very far. It kind of like, chugged up here a little bit and then went sideways. So, and again, that's being driven by just the yen being kind of flatline right now. And then the last one is the Euro NOK, which is similar to the Euro SEK we already looked at. The daily chart had a sell. Now, this is way before I started following these pairs. Obviously, I didn't take these. But this had a nice sell signal back on April 15th right here. And that still would be a valid trade right now to be in if you were in it, which, like I said, I wasn't looking at these pairs back then, so I didn't have them. And then we did get this sell signal on the 4-hour chart today. A little bit of a late signal because we kind of hit this bottom and we're bouncing off here, which is why I did not take the Euro NOK. I took the Euro SEK because it had a little bit more room to push to the downside before it hit a major support level, which is why I did not take this one, even though they had a very similar signal. So again, it's just not trading these in a vacuum. Look at what price is doing and where it's sitting. Is there any headroom or leg room for you to take that trade? And if not, then don't do it. So, all right. So, so that's it. I think I'm just going to leave it there for today. Let's just take a quick look at grains really fast. I did not take any trades. There was a really nice long on cattle yesterday. No, this was last Thursday. This is the 4-hour chart. That was the last entry on cattle. Soybean meal continues to rock it up again. These are all 4-hour charts. Um, this is soybean meal. Looks like maybe we've put in a short-term top here, and this is looks like it's potentially um, a lower high, and we're starting heading down. We were kind of moving a bit more sideways at these highs up here. You see, we kind of got like this big triple top up here on the daily, and then we put in this lower high. So we may start seeing more selling momentum on the on soybean meal. Soybeans itself, still bullish, but seems to be momentum seems to be slowing. We were in this big range. We did break out of this last week in here. Then we pulled back into it, and then we've gone up again, but we've failed to really go any higher here. And so we'll see. But I haven't taken any trades, and corn continues to go up. Um, Again, these are all 4-hour charts. And the big one is wheat has really been caught some really nice momentum to the upside here. So, but there were no setups on the 4-hour chart, so I didn't take anything today. And it was kind of the same thing with currency futures. The only one I was getting alerted on earlier, you can see I've got this euro futures right here on the 4-hour chart. But again, it's kind of range bound. I was getting a sell signal earlier. I didn't take it because we're sitting at a kind of a bottom here, but I wanted to see if price could smash through here. And then on this one is to the long side, this line right here. And you can see, it tagged it a couple of times today. You can see I got alerted a couple of times here, but it's still, like I said, it's looking pretty pathetic. And so I didn't take that trade. I don't like this kind of like chopping along these zones right here. And it tries to go up and it fails, and then it tries to go down and it hits the floor again. It's just whipsawing around. There's no trade momentum in here. There's no you know swing high or swing low that's holding and being broken. So even though I got alerted a couple of times earlier, I didn't take these. So. And I've been thinking about going to the daily chart, even on these assets, and only trading them on the daily chart, just to avoid having to do a lot of analysis because it's a lot of stuff to look at. And the grains I rather trade on like the 1 to 4 hour, but these currency futures I may take it like FOREX and just focus on the daily chart, and that way there it's I'm only going to get a trade once in a while, and I don't have to spend a lot of mental energy analyzing these on top of looking at 20 something forex pairs. It's just a lot, that's all. So anyways, there were no trades in that today anyway. So all right, so yeah, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Again, trading journal, some kind of trading journal, some kind of record keeping, super important. Doesn't have to be fancy. Create one yourself, steal one from somebody else, or if you really feel like you have to, you can pay money for a downloadable one or a print one or a website, a journaling website like a TradeZella or something like that, but not necessary. But if you want to, go for it. So yeah, so I'm going to leave it there, guys. Questions, comments, leave them down below. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back. And I hope you have a good afternoon, and I'll talk to you soon.